going to delay the towers of Todd just by running in, canceling, and he loses a Garg. But he slows down the human player a lot by doing this. And now Todd's Lumber is going to be even further behind. So Lucifer is taking the correct stance in this case. Right now, he's trying to make up for the huge rape that just happened to him. So, what's the best way to do that? Probably be a cheap ass. So, he's running around just doing everything he possibly can to make Todd's life a living hell and force him to use more APM. And I mean, like, APM is as much as a tool as it is a weapon. And the reason I say that is because what you have is two races. Okay, Lucifer's on one base, right? He has, let's say, 3 control groups. Humans on 2 bases, producing peasants from 2 buildings, trying to teching, making towers, making units. I mean, like, in my personal opinion, the human needs more APM in this case than the undead would if they were both using APM to max efficiency. And I'm not saying that to just say humans harder to play, because I think that undead's probably harder to play just in the general scope of things. But what you have is sort of the theory of APM in that sometimes to be doing things correctly, you need a certain amount of APM. Now, let's say Oxlov is using the exact right amount of APM. Well, whether that's true or not, you really can't say. But by forcing your opponent to be more active within a game, you're allowing them to make more mistakes. So, Lucifer, confident in his ability, multitasking his Gargs while creeping and preparing to set up an expansion and doing all these things, while using 2 separate screens in which split seconds can affect the life and death of his Gargs or units creeping, is very APM intensive. In that sense, it's a tool. But in the sense that it's a weapon, is that it's also forcing Todd to make a lot of be doing a lot of multitasking and distract him from a lot of the other things he'd like to be doing. It forces him to return to his expansion. He has to micro his peasants at his expansion. He has to repair towers. And who knows, maybe Todd will skip out on a couple gyrocopters because his economy built up because he was too busy microing his expansion. So when you think about forcing your opponent to use their APM, it's a very important thing. In ladder, one of the strategies I really like to use is I like to really strongly rush players with my Archmage, and especially in Human Mirror, I like to power build and rush while they're creeping their first camp. And what it does is, attacking their peasants, they're forced to micro between their early creeping, which is usually very easy and low APM, and their base, and their unprotected peasants, and their tower that's going up that I'm canceling. So it's very hard for a player to be forced into using that much APM, and that's basically what Lucifer has been trying to do, and that's, I think, the root of it. Man, that was like a long thing on APM theory. Whether or not APM is important is irrelevant in this argument. What is important is that you're forcing the opponent to be more active, and by doing that, you're setting them up to make more mistakes, which is how Lucifer was trying to come back in this game, which he probably should have been doing initially, but I think by rushing him with Gargs like that, even though it looked like it was going to work, it didn't work. So, again, should have played for the long game. Todd's probably a bit too good to be cheesed, so I would not recommend it. This looks extremely bad for Lucifer. Oh my god. Yeah, I don't really have much to say about it. It's just like, it's just so bad. Oh god. Yeah. That really just genuinely not good for Lucifer. Basically what happened with that fight was Todd A-clicked his gyrocopters and focused Gargs with his water Tauren, and then Lucifer was stuck breathifying the gyros and hoping his units would win while focusing them all, and suffice to say, his units did not win. So now what Todd's doing is you have to look there's a retroactive application to the units he's building. He isn't just, let's say, building this one unit to counter this one unit. He's looking at the game a different way. He's building a unit to counter his unit, and then a unit to counter Lucifer's base. So this makes a lot of sense. Whether or not it's fair or, nice is left to be said. But the fact is, when you're left to the simple idea of the concrete elements of the game, what wins the game? You will win the game when your opponent has no buildings left, right? You will win the game when you have defeated your opponent's army and they have no way of stopping you, right? So Todd has a very easy one-unit solution to Lucifer's army at this point, which is gyrocopters. However, gyrocopters are very weak against the Panda and don't have the base racing potential that they should. So what does he do? He solves it by going tanks. However, he could easily be going griffins as well, but tanks is more or less the right choice in this case, simply on the level that any sort of army that Lucifer has is either going to be distracted by killing tanks, or is going to be hard countered by gyrocopters. So Todd's train of thought on this is really spot on in that he's directly making the units that are going to win him the game without any fluff, which is pretty much always the correct play. And Todd, more or less, just setting up for his win at this point. There's very little Lucifer can do. If you look, there's an Acolyte doing 9 to 10 damage to a peasant. I'm cracking him in the face. Pyah! There's a team of gyrocopters chasing around a ghoul. Oh no, that ghoul's fucked. But basically, there's not much left to be said about this game. Lucifer was sort of effed from the get-go. And I'm not saying that because I think the matchup's imbalanced. I think that this particular spawn was imbalanced, and I think that Todd's just perfect ability to expand like that, and Lucifer's inability to be able to do any sort of super early game harassment essentially just made the game impossible for Lucifer. Though he did try and take it back with the Garg push, it just didn't seem likely that he was going to win at that point. It did not look like there was much he could do. Todd just leveling up Lucifer's base, getting raped. He's not repairing it really, but that's his call. And yep, that's the game. So, I think it's important to note in Human vs. Undead what you're actually looking at. Don't think of it as like, I need 2 bases to win, or I can't win on equal resources. Think of it as, I can expand because the undead player can't stop me. That's the right way to think about it. Now, whether or not that's balanced is not for me to say. What is for me to say is that because it's so easy to do, there's no reason you shouldn't be doing it. You don't always... you don't absolutely always have to go the route of expansion, but it usually helps just because it's so easy and effective. Okay, so let's put it this way. Versus Orc, you have 2 trains of thought. 3, let's say. Attack them early with Tower Rush, win. Okay, 50-50 on that. It's not always going to work. Push at tier 2 wins all the time. Army versus army, 50-50, not always going to work. What reason do you have for not pushing? You should do it every time because it's the most effective strategy. So, with that train of thought in mind, I implore you to just try and use the best possible route for attack in all of your games. Exactly what Todd did. And with that being said, that's a Joseki audio, and I will talk to you all later.